up to the dead old Brady, and one to the next to die.
Field Marshal Lord Roberts is often thought of as a gentleman, but when he realized that the Boers were far from finished, he began to introduce a brutal, scorched earth policy. Destroy the farms and burn down the farmhouses. The British ignored the Hague Convention on laws and customs of war, and we exercised a monstrous regime. We constructed all over southern Africa what we unfortunately call concentration camps, and we drove many thousands of women and children into them. Eventually, Lord Roberts retired to England, and Lord Kitchener took over his command, and the brutality increased. Of course, not every British soldier sympathized with his country's ruthless determination to crush the Boer people.
Helped to do it.
What was that like?
Oh, horrible, horrible, heartbreaking to us as youths. It wasn't right at all, but you had to do it.
Why did you have to do it?
Orders. Orders.
The world looked at us British and despised us. Not untinged with envy, I am sorry to add, because we British were going to take the gold away from the Boers and not them. We British stood naked before the world and were overwhelmingly unashamed. The Boers had great moral heroes, and we had none. But that awful contrast was about to change. Of course, we British suppressed the truth about what was happening to the Boer women and children of South Africa, but rumors were floating around, and they reached the consciousness of a maiden lady who lived in Cornwall. Her name was Emily Hobhouse. Perhaps Emily Hobhouse saw herself as a Lady Bountiful, a do-gooder, as they call it these days. But when she entered this British concentration camp, she was confronted by hell on earth. Death and appalling suffering were all around her. Emily calmly stated, "I call this camp system wholesale cruelty. It can never be wiped out from the memories of the people. It presses hardest on the children." Lord Kitchener was again forced to realize that he couldn't defeat the Boers in any conventional military sense, even with his scorched earth policy. So he and his imperial chums hit upon a new idea: build many hundreds of small forts called blockhouses, crisscrossing the great territories with thousands of miles of barbed wire, and in this method drive the many Boer commanders at them and thereby trap them. The Anglo-Boer War was now bitter attrition. Of course, the British casualties, wounded or dead, were reasonably looked after. But the social class arrangements of imperialism were ever present.
Those who lost their lives, unfortunately, they were sewn up in a blanket, which charged against their account by the government.
They were charged?
Yes, a man had to pay, yes, out of, when he got his settling up money, The price of the blanket was deducted from any credit due to him.
That doesn't speak too well for England, does it?
That happened out there.
Now the fighting Boers were inevitably at the end of their tether. Their farming land and cattle, etc., were destroyed, and most awful of all, some 26,000 of their women and children, and remember, out of a small total population, were dead in the British concentration camps. These thousands of still fighting Boers, the Afrikaners of today, were known as the Bitterenders. Their numerically small nation was faced with virtual genocide at the hands of the British. And not only the British, black Africans were beginning to go on a murderous rampage. Isolated and unprotected Boer women and children were savagely butchered. The Boer military leaders met at Vereniging to discuss the terrible reality. Koos de la Rey, now known as the Lion of the West, stood up, and he spoke the unadorned truth.
It is no longer a question of fighting to the bitter end. This is the bitter end.
Alfred Milner, the British High Commissioner, was at his cold, merciless worst. And beside him, Lord Kitchener appeared to be a relative humanitarian. And also present was the awful spirit of Joseph Chamberlain, the ultimate puppet master of Britain's empire. The Boers signed the surrender document, and their proud independence was destroyed in this room. The bloody war had been fought, and inevitably the British Empire had won at a ghastly cost in human suffering, and all for British material profit. At the foot of this memorial, the Afrikaner people of the Orange Free State buried their great president, Martin Steyn, and their great fighting general, Christian de Wet. On June the 8th, 1926, Emily Hobhouse died, and at her request, the Boers, the Afrikaner people of today, brought her remains down the South Atlantic Ocean and then here to Bloemfontein, where she joined the national heroes. A vast concourse of people attended the ceremony. The Afrikaner people mourned. The statesman, Jan Smuts, spoke the oration. We stood alone in the world, friendless among the people. This smallest nation ranged against the mightiest empire on the earth. And then, one small hand, the hand of a woman, was stretched out to us. At that darkest hour, when our race almost appeared to be doomed to extinction, she appeared as an angel, a heaven-sent messenger. And strangest of all, she was an English woman Oh, and incidentally, that Second Anglo-Boer War, I repeat,
was the beginning of the end of the British Empire.
Dreads to the dead returning from that sable shore, and haughty yearning of the souls will